Gotta leave.
Call the meeting to order for
Visitors.
our August meeting for West Dakota Water Development District. And the first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next item is a roll call. Dan?
Okay, roll call for August 8, 2023, West Dakota Water Development District. Kerr.
Here.
Gerke.
Here.
Mack.
Here.
Pogue.
Here.
Ackerman.
Here.
Fleming.
Here.
McGregor.
Here.
Rowe.
Here.
Driscoll.
I'm here.
All present, Mr. Chair. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. All right, the next item is approval of the agenda.
Move approval.
Moved by Scott.
Yep.
And seconded by Craig. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The next item is approval of the minutes from our July meeting. Is there anything on the minutes that needs to be corrected?
Move to approve.
Moved by Driscoll for approval, second by Thomas. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 5, conflict of interest. On item number 8, or number 9, I'm going to abstain from voting on that item because it's reference to a conference in Spearfish that I'm planning on attending, and we'll be bringing that, but I am going to abstain because I'm the person that will be going. Anybody else have a conflict of interest on any of the items on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is the treasurer's report. Yeah?
Just starting top to bottom here. Revenue received to date is $144,670. Current or projected tax revenue for the year is $242,443. And for savings and checking, we currently have $186,156. And then we have 4 CDs here from Raymond James. The first 2 listed here are coming due, so that will be another another agenda item to make a decision on those 2. Each one is $126,000 for the principal. And then there's a 12-month that's coming due next year for $246,000. Then there's a smaller one here for $10,000 that I think was established so we didn't exceed the FDIC insurance limitation. So anyway, the bottom line is the total funds as of the 3rd, this is as of the 3rd, $694,156. Expenditures, non-project expenditures to date were $29,033, and project expenditures to date $81,409. So that brings the total expenditures to date $110,442, which leaves us in our budget $152,723. So if there are no questions on that, I'll move on to the next one, is the project report. And I listed all the projects, and There's the amount granted in one column, and then the current paid amount in the other. And then the right-hand column is what we owe on all of those. So some of the big ones are the Rapid Creek Restoration with the Pennington County Conservation District, and then the Green Valley Sanitary District for $125,000. The Rapid Creek one was $50,000. So that the total project obligations come to $259,584. The next chart is just a Gantt chart showing the different projects. Just to kind of give you an idea of the span of the projects in the timeline. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, is there any questions for Dan? If not, we entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh, yes, Scott.
Question perhaps for Mr. Driscoll rather than,
Okay.
why are we still showing outstanding amounts on these erosion control projects at LaCroix and up on Star Village? What do we have left to do there?
On Star Village, about 95% of that remains to be completed. We've just barely cracked the surface on it, and the money that's allocated now will only scratch the surface. To really get where we need to go in future years, there'll need to be more funding there. In the case of LaCroix, we may actually wrap this up this fall to a large extent if things would happen the way I'd hope they might happen, and I'll touch more on that. I've got an agenda item to update on that. So.
Thank you.
Okay, you got any other questions then? I'd entertain a motion for approval.
Move to approve.
Moved by Driscoll, second by Ackerman. Okay, by Robert. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carried. Item number 7, approved the 2024 budget and tax levy request, and our treasurer, Mr. Cole.
Okay, so this was a topic that we discussed at our last meeting in July, where we kind of went over the budget in more detail, authorized publication of it. So that's been done. Our administrator published it for two consecutive weeks, I think, according to the rules. And so now on page 11 of 18, it shows what we authorized him to publish and what we discussed and generally approved to go forward with last month. It shows that our anticipated tax revenue will be $249,756, and then it kind of generally details what we know are our expenses. The non-project expenditures are fairly easy to quantify. It's our administrative services, budget, rent, etc. And then our project expenditures, the ones that we have down there, we think we are going to be spending money on next year, although we do have flexibility, as we go forward. So we've already kind of discussed all this. The only thing that's, I guess, again, notable on this one, maybe to reiterate, is that we are anticipating that if we spend all this money, including the bigger ones, the Pennington County and Green Valley, will exceed our income for the year. But with our money in the bank and our money in savings and checkings, that's not an issue. So I guess I would put a motion on the floor to approve our FY24 budget and tax levy.
Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Cheryl. Any questions on it?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
My understanding is this levy request is what state law allows us to levy, right?
It's the default amount for our district based on their calculations of the consumer price index, the increase in population, because there'll be more people that are going to pay in that, small fee, it's, what is it, 1/10 of a mil.
And this number comes out of Pier?
Yeah, it's the default number.
Okay. So
I think, do you just want to say something like
Well, it
that?
comes from the county.
The county, yeah.
Yeah.
So Pennington County gives us that number.
I talked to the auditor, and she said that she gets a number out of Pier
Oh,
on what to levy for us.
Probably. But
So it trickles down. Anyway.
I think it does trickle.
It's the default number based on population, the CPI, and, our, I think it's 1/10 of a mil is what our levy is.
Okay. Now, if we were to request a levy of less than this, am I correct in understanding then that that sets a new baseline for us that we couldn't go above again?
that's
We start
correct.
over again,
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
We've done that a few years ago. This board did that, but
Okay, so that kind of puts us in a box where you have to go back to an opt-out procedure or what?
yeah,
The increase again to get back to the default level?
yeah, I was on the board when that happened, and we were at about 230,000 plus a year, and the board decided that I guess they didn't need it, but so they went back to 200,000.
Yeah.
So from that time on, it's been building up to where we are at 240 some thousand.
Yeah, this is the default.
Yeah.
We have to be somehow active, which would have been our thing to do last month, essentially, when we discussed the budget and published a different default number. I don't know what we would do if we wanted to decide to do it differently this meeting, because we already did our public notice and this is our budget meeting.
Well, that was just what we were proposing, if you noticed.
Yeah.
Because I remember I asked at our last meeting if we could change it yet, and I was told we could.
Well, we can change anything in the budget because it's just a guideline, but the levy is once we approve that, that's a done deal.
Did we approve the levy at the last meeting?
We approved the publication of the notice that says that's what our levy was going to be.
Yeah.
Yes.
We didn't approve that levy, we're doing that today.
No, that's what we're doing.
We're doing
is
it
approve
right
our
now.
budget and the levy. Yeah.
We're doing that right now.
Yeah, right.
My concern is we don't really need all of this money, but if we don't levy it, that we're putting ourselves in a future box.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted
I
to
mean, if we
clarify
have
that-
a water problem, we don't need to do that.
I just wanted to clarify that.
That's correct.
And that's the fun problem that we get to have is where we don't take it, it drops it back down. Let's say 200,000, just to play with that number. Next year it would be like 212. It wouldn't be 260 or whatever it could be after that. So that's where it's like, if you see bigger projects in the horizon, you kind of have to take it so it naturally goes up. But
Nobody ever said our property tax system was sane. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, we're ready to vote on it then. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
I have to ask, did anybody not vote? Okay, so it was unanimous.
Unanimous, yeah.
It's kind of important to have
Yes. Item number 9 is approve my registration fee for attending the South Dakota Water and Wastewater Association.
actually, it's a special meeting listening session.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You just want to get that.
I want to get that
fee. Did they tell you have to get in by 5 tonight or something?
Yeah. Sorry about that. That's, I'm over 70 now, so. Okay, item number 8, discussion on the special meeting listening session that we talked about on water issues, and we set the date for November 1st, and Craig did that for us. Any input?
So we'd originally asked for November 14, but there were no rooms available at the facility we want, so November 1 there was. We're in the morning, we have to be out by noon. And Dan's got several, a spreadsheet with names on of who was invited the last couple of times. I thought what we might do is circulate that to the directors in the next week and just say, here's the people that are already on there. If we've got anybody else who should come, please get us, notification of who that is and how to get a hold of them. And then, I really haven't looked at how we developed the agenda for that, but we've got some old minutes and things. I think we should probably just use kind of the same format, invite these organizations to come and talk to us about water needs and issues that they've got.
What we did before, the last one was we just, it's a round table over there, and we just went one after another and gave them an opportunity, to, whatever area, whoever they worked for, just gave a short presentation on what they were doing in terms of water.
And then we'd also have a notice, the public notices would go out too, so that everyone would be aware that we were having the meeting.
Sure. Yeah, it's an official meeting for us, yeah.
This should run from 9 or 10 to 2.
What did you say?
Well, we haven't set the
What,
exact time yet.
starting
We have to be out at noon, so what time do you want to start? Is 9 o'clock good? 6:30? Well, that's when I start.
I'd suggest 9.
That's 3 hours, and we should be done in 3 hours. Do you have something, Dan?
Our previous iterations, we'd had run from 1 till 5, and we ended up basically filling 4 hours always.
Yeah, we did.
There always was a lot of discussion, so I'd probably lean towards 8 or 8:30 at the latest. If people can't get there for the beginning, it doesn't matter, but
Right.
most of them are people with agencies and, used to starting the day at 8 o'clock.
Let's go 8 to noon. If we
You
finish
can always
before-
quit early.
Yeah, if we
Yeah.
quit early, we're just out early. But we have to be out at noon.
Okay. Well, this item is just an FYI, so
Yep.
we'll just,
Okay, so we'll circulate a list of the names that we're going to send notices to individually. And if you've got people that aren't on there, let us know, and then
okay.
won't be long after that, we'll publish our notices.
So, do you want to write up a short little paragraph? Do you want me to
I
handle
will.
that? Okay.
Well, I can draft something and send it to you for, let's get the list out first to the directors and let them give us some feedback.
Okay, sounds good.
And then, while that's going on, I'll write up the draft and you can edit it.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for doing that, Craig, by the way. Now we're on item 9.
Yeah, item 9 is to approve Dan Bierke's registration fee for the payment for the South Dakota Water and Wastewater Association Conference in Spearfish in September. As you can see in your packet, would be page 13 is the application form. Mr. Bierke is asking for $150 to pay for the conference registration fee. It's not. Are you asking for mileage as well?
No, as I said in the last meeting, I'm not staying up there and I'm driving back and forth, and there won't be any additional cost.
That's what I thought, but I didn't want to put it on you, and then you're like, oh, by the way, I would like mileage. No. So it's all we are covering as a board from the request is the $150 conference fee. Is there a motion on the floor to approve this request?
So moved.
So made.
Is there a second?
Motion made and seconded motion by Driscoll, seconded by Robert.
Okay.
For
Discuss for approval?
Yeah, discussion on the motion.
Discussion
As
on
I
the
said, I'm
motion.
going to be abstaining on voting.
What is this organization?
It's an organization that includes, it's kind of set up for operators to some degree, but they have, topics on engineering and what's DA&R is there. They kind of run the show and, handle the registrations. They have for years.
How old is it? Has it been around forever?
Oh, forever. Till 40, 50 years. So it's all the operators for the municipal and sanitary district.
Well, it's an organization that takes water and creates wastewater?
No, it's water and wastewater. So there's people that are in water systems, the operators, they have to be certified by the state to operate a system, a municipal or public system, including sanitary districts, and also on the wastewater side. But the American Water Works Association, South Dakota American Water Works Association, has their meetings during this conference, and so does the Water Environment Federation, which is the wastewater side. It's a federal organization. They all have their meetings at this conference.
Don't you want to go to their dinners and banquets?
Well, yeah.
Well, why don't we give you that $50 too to go?
No, no. This- all I'm asking for is a registration fee. I went to it last year. It was in Sioux Falls.
Yeah.
It goes back and forth, West River, East River, and so I did attend it last year in Sioux Falls.
That's all you want, okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Christie?
It should be noted, Mr. Bierke tells me that this fee also does not include the golf tournament.
It does not. What's your point?
Just so everyone's aware, he's not trying to milk the system. He's just going as a professional affiliation.
Exactly.
What's it take to be a member?
Well, you pay a fee to be a member, and this registration fee for the operators is usually paid by whoever they work for, is a year's registration for the organization. And they have, they're like us, they have officers and so forth, and they meet, the operators have like a conference too, that besides this, that they attend in order to stay certified. It's kind of an education thing for operators across the state of South Dakota. So it's been around for as long as I know. It's a good organization.
You were a member when you were with the city then?
I was, yeah.
Good.
Any other questions? Not hearing any other questions, the motion is motion by Driscoll, seconded by Ackerman, to authorize payment of the registration fee for the South Dakota Water and Wastewater Association Conference for Chairman Bierke. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay.
I am abstaining.
And Bierke is abstaining. So everybody was aye, except Bierke abstained.
Okay. Item number 10. Vote on action to take on the 2 Raymond James CDs that Dan mentioned that are expiring here on August 23rd, $126,000 each. Ron, do you want to cover that?
Yeah, okay, so if you look on your budget sheet that is in your packet, I guess it's the first one, page 8 of 18, those are shown on that kind of darkish yellow, lightish orange deal. They both come due on August 23rd. They're in right now at 4.7% at Raymond James. And so it's a little bit of a speculation in terms of the interest rate that's going to be available on August 23rd, but since we're meeting now and we need authorization, we'll use what rates they're giving us right now. They think that those are going to be similar, and they have rates. They have terms that run all the way from 3 months to 12 months that offer fairly good rates. The one that I guess I focused on because of our substantial checking account reserve and the fact that we'll be getting more money again in January is the 12-month one. It's at 5.55 right now, which is it's a pretty good rate. I think that Dan checked at the community bank, and they actually go down at 12 months to 4.5%. So if we're comparing apples and apples, we're basically a little bit better off with the Raymond James at 5.55%. And on an annualized basis with that total amount of money, that would net us in the vicinity of $13,000 of interest. So I guess the way I look at it and the way that we have our money available to us right now with the money in the savings, and then we also have another CD that will come due next June, depending upon our needs for funds. I guess I would recommend going with that high interest rate at 5.55% for a year with Raymond James for both of those 2 maturing CDs, and then we're going to net about $6,000, I think, in interest on those 2. I think we just would roll that back in and gain that, good interest rate on the cumulative total then.
Is there any reason we can't combine these 2 into just one?
Well, we we have to stay below $250,000 in order to maintain a full FDIC insurance on those CDs, and that's why they were broken up initially, and that's why there's also that little $10,000 one. That was the result of, our previous CDs that were below 250, but then the interest accumulated, so then we had a separate amount. So that's why they're separated. So we could make a maximum one of, 249 and then some small, or we could have two of them that would be basically equal. And it's kind of 6 and 1.5 dozen of the other.
Easy enough just to roll the existing instruments over for 12 months each, isn't it?
I think so, yeah, and then just roll the accumulated interest in, which would be a total of about $6,000.
So that 126 would be 130-some thousand each one of them? Or?
No, the rate is annualized, so those were only 6-month CDs.
Okay.
So, the total interest between them is about $6,000.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So, I guess that would be my recommendation. I guess I would, for lack of anything else, I guess I'll put that in terms of a motion, is to renew, the 2 maturing CDs at a 12-month 5.5, or the prevailing rate, approximately 5.55% at Raymond James when they mature in August, and then to roll in the accumulated interest.
Second that motion.
Seconded by Scott. Did you get that all, Dan?
Maybe. I got motion by Coates, seconded by McGregor, to take money and interest from Raymond James CDs maturing 23 August into 2 new 12-month CDs. Is that good?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
That's it.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Dan?
Would we want to consider running one of the CDs at a 6-month term so they're staggering a little bit?
I was thinking the same thing.
That would have one coming due more or less 6 months would be around February or something. I see we've got some then in May and June, and then one would be back around August. So the difference in interest rate is inconsequential, but it basically have a little bit more cash flow coming around.
Yeah, just in case. I was thinking the same
Was the
thing.
interest rate the same for 6 months and 12 months?
It's 5 1/4.
They'll be slightly different.
It's a little bit different. The reason I guess I didn't suggest that as my recommendation is that we've got $186,000 in checking right now.
Oh,
In January, we'll get another $120,000 coming in. We'll have $300,000 in the bank at that point in time if we need money. And I thought we'd just maximize our yield and lessen our chances of having the interest rates drop, which are a potential, according to the folks at Raymond James, and evidenced by the fact that the 12-month CD at the community bank is already at 4.5%. It's going down.
That answer your question?
And
Yeah.
we've got
I
another
have the same
250
thought.
coming due in 6 months.
I think that's fine.
Right,
Either
in
way.
June.
In June.
In June, we'll have a chance to do something there different if we want to start playing with separation and needs, because, we're going to talk about some things here coming up the agenda where in 2024 we may actually get to spend some of our money on some bigger projects.
And there is a mechanism to cash those in early. I think we have to find a buyer for them. It could be.
Yeah, if we had to, but I guess I don't really see where that's going to happen.
Any other questions, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign, motion carries. Thank you. All right, item 11, request authorization to develop a proposal that would expend up to $25,000 for an erosion control project in collaboration with the South Dakota National Guard at West Camp Rapid. Dan, you want to take that one?
Sure, Dan, if you want to pull up that PowerPoint file, we don't really need it to get started, but it's actually been a couple of years ago that several of us had some initial discussions with South Dakota National Guard about an erosion control project out there. It's basically along the west side of Hills View Drive, which turns into 44th Street as it goes north. So that's a screen capture from Google Earth. You're basically looking at Stevens High there, and the road. You're looking to the west. You're looking from east to west. So the guard camp is on the west side of that road, and I'll just go up to the front here. Basically, there's kind of a high spot right about in here, and this is Hills View as it runs to the south, and you can see there's quite a few erosive areas. Basically, it's a pretty steep slope in there, and then this becomes 44th Street going north, and you can see the erosive areas along there. It's basically just along the right-of-way that we're really interested in working. You can see plenty of bare red shale farther out there, but whatever may be done there could be addressed in the future. You know, how exactly we're working with the guard camp, maybe some unknowns there. It's not like working with picking up a deal at Star Village or out at Raider Park and talk to a local guy and say, let's put together a project, and away you go. There's actually, this piece of property to the east is owned by the National Guard also, and it's got some pretty severe erosion in there. But the way I'm looking to do the project is that the National Guard would provide the equipment and manpower. It would essentially be done as a training exercise for them, and because of basically archaeological cultural considerations, they've got an agreement that they're not allowed to do any sort of work within that parcel. So there's quite a need there. It'd be a good candidate, but that one's going to be off limits for at least a while. So this is kind of a chicken and an egg, cart and a horse sort of thing. The mechanism for submitting a proposal is online. There's been maybe a moving target. When we had initially had discussions a couple of years ago, it kind of sounded like we'd just get together with the folks here locally and put together a proposal, and I'd basically done that. The players changed a little bit initially. For those people who may know Marcia Elkins, she'd been in the city offices for quite a few years, their planning department.
She was the planning director.
Wasn't it? And she made it sound pretty simple, just, well, let's get together and put together a project, and away we go. Things went to a back burner there for a while for a couple of reasons, but we picked it up again. Director Bierke and I had talked with basically some new players there, and they ended up saying, well, the way this needs to be handled is that you need to apply online for what's called an IRT program, and I think it's like Innovation Readiness Training or something. It's a training program, so it's going to be an online application, and I've done no more than just get there to where I know where it's at, and I have not yet started the process. It needs to be submitted by September 30th. There are two potential mechanisms. One mechanism is to be funded by, they call it OSD, Office of Secretary of Defense. Another mechanism is that it's basically handled more locally, which I think is the way this one would end up being. It strikes me as a little odd that this is the mechanism, but it seems to be what it is. I mean, this is unusual. The normal things are if you've got like a community project in need, you go there and say, we could use help from the National Guard in building a flood berm, or et cetera, and So you'd submit this way, and they'd say, okay, we've decided this is a go, and away you go. I find it unusual because this is on National Guard property. There was a contact, for submitting these proposals, or applications is a more proper term. I got a chance here a couple of weeks ago to call them and talk to them and make sure, would this really be a qualifying sort of a project, or am I just wasting my time here? And they said, no, even though it seems a bit unusual, that's really the way to go. So I'm not sure how it will end up, what it will look like there. I doubt if I'll be proposing details. It'll probably be more generalities, and I think the generalities would be that we would provide some amount of funding up to a not exceed amount, and perhaps it could even be construed such that we could add additional funds to it later if needed. But I think the request then will be that they will basically cover pretty much the entirety of the equipment and manpower for everything that could be done mechanically, which I'd like to think is the majority of it. And it wouldn't surprise me that from a kind of a safety standpoint that, a lot of what we've done has been with volunteers, that may be prohibited. They may not be able to have civilians out there helping. I really don't know. So I wasn't really sure what's the best thing to do, other than it doesn't feel right to go in there and say, well, I'm going to put in an application without having approval from the board to do so. I'm sure that if this is going to fly, it would involve us providing funds for standard things. We may or may not need to buy topsoil. It depends on whether there'd be a source available. Typically what we would buy then is erosion control blanket, grass seed, things like that. And so basically the experience I've got, I'm pretty sure that $25,000 would go quite a ways towards covering the things we'd need to do there. When we'd initially talked with Marcia Elkins, she'd talked as if the Guard likely could put funding into it. If there would be a way for them to do that, I could certainly propose it in that fashion, that we might go 50-50 on the funding. I have a hunch that probably what I'll be looking at is that, probably we would be the entity on the funding, and of course the cost associated with the mechanical end of it would far exceed, this $25,000. So I have no misgivings if we would cover the entirety of the costs. To me that's entirely trivial, and I guess a lot of the way I look at these things, I don't know how many decades ago that road was built, but they really didn't get it properly revegetated, and it's been going downhill ever since, and it's just going to keep going downhill until someone like us comes along and fixes it. So I guess that's the background on it, and is it best that I proceed with a motion, or should we kick things around a little before we spin our wheels on a motion?
I didn't mind just add that, because Ron was out there and I was out there looking at it, and even during a rainfall runoff event, that if you go back to that photo, that material on the top of that hill runs down to Canyon Lake Drive and goes right straight into the storm sewer and goes right straight into Rapid Creek. That's what's happening right now on a runoff event.
I guess there's one more slide there. I don't recall what I put on it. That's a zoomed view of the south end. Just shows a little bit more of the steepness, and you get close enough, you'd see there's rivulets carved all along there. So it's a pretty typical scenario. That's all spearfish formation, and it's very, very erosive. Very prone to lots of erosion.
Oh, this is a steep grade.
Yeah.
I mean, that back slope is very
And that's the
steep.
guards' land there, just
Yeah.
north of
Yeah.
the school?
Yeah, and if you
Just
ever
west
drive
of the
up, if you ever
school.
drive
West
up
of
there,
the
you
school,
look at it,
and-
you can see
Yeah.
it's a very steep grade there where that erosion is taking place.
Like I say, they've got many tens of acres of ground farther west that's erosive, but it's not as visible. I didn't include a slide of it. There are some parts of West Camp Rapid that basically drain into. There's many people don't know it. There's a storm control or a flood control reservoir out there on the southeast corner of that property.
Yep.
What do they call it? What's the name of that thing?
You mean the road?
Red Dale Dam. So,
Red there.
Yeah, it's Red Deal Dam, yeah.
so a certain amount of that sediment's being trapped there, which is kind of a good
It's not
thing.
making it to the creek.
Right, it makes a little lower priority from my standpoint.
So tell me why this is not a $25,000 bribe to the National Guard to approve a training session to fix an erosion problem on their own property that they've been ignoring for decades.
Well, like I say, one thing is nobody's touched it in decades. I guess maybe if you went out there and talked to them and said, "Why don't you fix it?" I don't know that you're going to get very, very far that way. The other end of it is that a lot of this was in fact caused by the road construction. It wasn't necessarily the fault of the Guard, but to me, the bottom line, it's been this way for decades and nobody's lifted a finger on it, and so I certainly don't in any way, shape, or form think of it as a $25,000 bribe. I guess what I think of it is for only something on the order of $25,000, probably less than that, we could get the court or the Guard to work with us to fix a problem instead of letting it continue to pump sediment into that creek for the next however many
And
decades.
I think when they built Hillsview, I mean, there wasn't the rules and regulations that are in place now. If you're rebuilding a road like that, whoever builds it, whether
That was the city, right? Or
the city or county or whoever would have addressed erosion control. So it's been there, like you said, in the National Guard. I mean, that's probably not high on their priority list to go out fixing problems that are eroding.
Well, they do want to fix it. I mean, when
Yeah,
we
they do.
talked to Marcia, it was a little
Yeah.
different story than the current people, but she said, we want to be good
Yeah.
stewards, and
She did.
and of course, this problem is not unique to here. Of course, right down where you live, Scott, how many times have you drive south on 79 right about where you're turning into Black Gap, and just a few hundred yards beyond it, there's a pretty steep hillsides on both sides that never got revegetated properly, and they're pumping that black shale on down into our waterways. So anyhow, that's my answer. I'm sticking to it.
So how do we change that? How do we change that?
I don't know, but
Yeah, I know.
I continue to oppose using our money to pay for the other government entities to supplement their budget. This just doesn't pass the smell test for me.
Are you looking for a motion or what?
Well, that's kind of where I had left things. To what extent do we want to discuss it before I make a motion? I can certainly put a motion on the table anytime, and we can begin formal discussion.
This, is this a motion that you need for this application?
Well, like I say, I don't want to proceed with an application and then after the fact we have a discussion. What in the hell are we doing getting into this?
Okay.
We obviously, Scott's concerns. We need to discuss this before I submit an application. So I guess I'll just throw up a motion that I will request authorization. I guess it's pretty much right there, to develop a proposal. Let's call it develop an application I'll just leave it as a proposal. Just use it the way you've got it there and copy paste and that'll be fine.
So that's your motion up there.
Yep.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Robert. Okay, discussion, open for discussion on the motion.
Dan, did I hear you say that the guard couldn't do this because they have an agreement with the archaeological folks not to touch this area?
No, I pointed out a parcel that's on the east side of Hillsview, which would be immediately south of Stevens, and that parcel is off limits. But everything to the west side of
Range
the
into
road
that.
they are able to work in there.
Thomas?
Yeah, so with this, do you know how extensive or the proposal will, just to humor me, like if you do submit this application, you do a wonderful job like you normally do on these, could it be like 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road? Did they give you a timetable of after submitting to kind of give you a timeline? I know this is all hypothetical because you haven't really even gone through the applications.
September 30th is the deadline for what is a 2-year funding cycle. And there's a big black box, and I haven't even really opened the lid, but the information I've gotten from, asking is that what happens is for it to happen, there has to be a guard unit that picks it up and say, we want to do this. And so I don't exactly know what that means, other than I gather that when I go out and talk to these people at Camp Rapid, these are more like office people, and probably what would happen is like maybe the engineering unit in Spearfish might say, oh, that would be a fit for us, or some such thing. I really don't know, but I think if that would happen, then what they would probably say is that it can't happen this year, obviously. They might say, well, we'll look at that as one thing we could do as part of our 2024 training exercise. But I would think it would happen within 1 year and at most 2 years if it was going to happen at all.
So the biggest thing is, if we would vote to approve this motion, you'd start the process, you would get it started, but the financial actual ask could happen maybe after the board turns over somewhat, after the 2024 year, before they have the plan, hypothetically. That's what I'm just trying to figure out is, I don't want you to do the work and then they ask the money in 2025, half the board is gone, or half the board, or everybody's here. I don't know, I'm not a mind reader, I'm not telling anybody that they have to stay or leave, but that all of a sudden then we shoot down our financial commitment to that. That's what that's kind of my hankering is like, I'm all for the idea and submitting the application. I'm just wondering when the amount will be needed, and that answer we really don't have until we actually start and figure out probably after that September 30th.
Well, I think my sense of it would be that if we're authorizing me to develop the proposal, if they pick it up, they say, yes, we want to do it, in essence, I think we have pre-approved the expenditure.
Okay.
Yeah, we would have.
I mean, it's kind of this chicken and egg thing, but I don't think, if we were to submit an application and they say, we want to do this, and then we say, well, first we got to vote on it whether or not we're going to fund it. I think up front we're saying, we're willing to invest in this.
So a vote for the project is approving $25,000 without.
I think it really boils down to that. And if we want to make the wording different, that's fine. But I think that's what we're really doing is basically pre-committing that money if they decide they pick it up. And
if they don't pick it up, then we're not spending the money anyway.
Right.
But the thing about it is, with Dan proposing it, it's pointing out to them, here's something that needs to be fixed. Otherwise, they're just not even going to look at it. They're not going to think about it. So I think that's a benefit to him actually doing that proposal. So I think it's a good thing.
The local people from the National Guard, I mean, they were, there's rules and regulations that they have to go by, but like those two officers that we were talking to, I thought it was a great project, and also an opportunity for the National Guard to show that they're doing community service by
I think it's a
correcting a
win-win.
long-term problem.
It sounds to me like it would be a win-win.
As long as somebody else will pay for it.
As long as, well,
Or help.
they'd be spending money.
Yeah. Oh,
But to
yeah.
use their equipment, that's cost money. And to use
That's the
manpower, that
chunk of the
costs money.
change.
But it takes somebody like us to get them off their
Yeah.
rear end
That-
to do the
that's-
project.
that's-
Do it, yeah.
Yep.
That-
Point it out.
That's true.
Yep.
Is this ground within the city limits?
I think the city limit is right at Hillsview
It's
and
right-
44th, so I think it's out.
that National Guard land is not in the city.
I just looked on Rapid Map last night, and I had the impression they're outside the city.
Yeah, I think so too, so. It's within our district though. Did you have a question, Ryan?
Well, I share some of these concerns about how we always have to ante up to get somebody to do anything when there's all these problems around, but on the other hand, I drive by this one in particular a lot, and it's always running red whenever it rains. They actually put that hot mix in the road shoulder, and there's enough force and grade that it's eroding the hot mix out. So there's a lot of force of water going down that slope.
Very steep grade in there.
And so I guess, one of our missions is to try and improve water quality in Rapid Creek, and one of the biggest problems is, sediment loading. So I guess if we have to pay to get somebody to do something, that's how it goes.
And they have the equipment to do it.
They would have the equipment.
They have the equipment to
Right.
do it, which they're gonna need on
And
that
they would
side.
have, there's probably some things on this site that I would think, just from my past experience, that may need a little bit of engineering. So then they would have that ability to provide the
Right.
technical expertise for engineering as
Right.
well.
Yeah.
Because if they just go in
That's
there
their training, right?
throw some
Engineering.
stuff around and grade it, it'll be a problem again in another year.
Yeah.
They're gonna have to do some land, surface changes. They may have to put a drop inlet in. There's a whole bunch of stuff that may have to get done.
Any other questions? All right, so the motion, who seconded the motion? Yeah, so we got a motion and a second. No more discussion, so all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Thomas and Scott are no. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 12, approve up to $7,500 for preparation of the BOR Water Smart Grant by Bar Engineering. Ron?
Okay, so this is we've been talking about this on and off, in various ways for a number of years, and there's been a subcommittee that's been meeting with, the Bureau and the city, and, we've been talking with Bar Engineering about some of the things that can be done, basically as a carry-on to what the School of Mines thesis done by Rosemary Squillis identified. It's probably been about 3 or 4 years ago now. And her thesis identified the fact that there's probably another way that we can manage the Pactola Deerfield system that it's going to be more beneficial to all the users versus just the same old thing that they've done, for the last 50 years, more or less. There's probably some room in there for some increased water flow during the wintertime. There's probably some room for some, different ways to pulse water into the flood pool that we aren't taking advantage of right now. And like this year, we've seen the evidence of that as soon as we have, any rain, because they manage the water level so close to the top of the flood pool that then there's always a concurrent larger discharge than necessary. So we're essentially, we're not storing some of that water. Now this year it's not a big deal, but we're not storing some of that water that could even potentially be available for future municipal demands that we're seeing come online. as well as mitigating some of those smaller event flood pulses that essentially are problematic as the water volume builds going downstream. You know, we don't see it so much in town because Rapid Creek is so armored, and you don't see it so much up in the canyon areas because many of the areas that are impacted are not visible from the road. But when you go down Rapid Valley, you know, all of that stuff is really being eroded. And part of it is because of these large releases that are required. And that's part of the reason we got involved with Pennington County Conservation District and are trying to help them with volunteer landowner or willing participant landowners to come on board and do some of that erosion control. So there's and Craig is probably more familiar with this maybe than I am, but there's a program that's available through the Bureau of Reclamation. It's called Water Smart, and I think it's maybe 4 or 5, maybe 6 years old, and it provides grant-making opportunity or funding opportunities through cost-share grants for both sort of study and planning, and then also for construction. And so what we're proposing to do is, during the month of August yet, we would be meeting with some of the key stakeholders, like the city, the Rapid Valley Irrigation District, Pennington County, maybe the marina concessionaire, the local bureau people, the people from Omaha who represent the flood control pool management of Pactola, and kind of gain a general consensus that, yeah, maybe Rosemary had a good idea, or she identified that there was a good possibility we could do some things differently at Pactola. So this grant would be then applied for, so we could do some more additional study based on recommendations from the Bureau. They want to use a different kind of model that Rosemary used, which is not a big deal. And then we need to include a basin hydrology model in there, which she did not include. She just used the period of record for all of the flows. So there are some things that we need to do to find out if what she thinks is possible through her thesis work is really possible. And then we go forward with, you know, additional dialogue with all the stakeholders and, well, can we do this and can we make it work? But the first thing is to do some additional study. So we'd be proposing to apply for a grant if we get consensus from these major stakeholders, and we would use a third-party vendor to do that, Bar Engineering, which has had some success with these Water Smart grants in the past and has the, you know, the technical ability to put together a very complete grant package. This one-page deal in here on page 15 of 18 is, it's kind of like the tip of the iceberg for real fine print. If you really want to see what's involved with the grant, I think there's a live link on that page. Yeah, Water Smart Applied Science Index. You go to that and you'll see what's involved, you know, in one of these grant applications. So it's a fairly involved process. The grant is due be submitted by October 17th, and if we would propose to hire Bar, they're going to need a month to do that grant. So it's kind of outside of our meeting line, so that's why I'm bringing this forward now. And then I'm presuming that we can be successful during this month of August here in meeting with these key stakeholders as a kind of a small subgroup of the main board to get them to agree that, you know, there is something there that we should be looking at in light of our need for additional municipal water and the fact that we probably don't want to see Rapid Creek, you know, suffering from, you know, low water any more than it has to during, you know, various periods of our seasonal cycles and annual cycles. So this is sort of the short story on it. There's been a lot of work that's gone into it so far from a subgroup and meeting with the various, you know, subparts of this stakeholder group.
If the grant's approved, who actually does the work?
Okay, so if we do a good job of selling the grant, there's two things. We'd need to hire, you know, a consulting company to do the modeling work that's necessary. In your package, there's actually a proposal that we requested from Bar, so we knew kind of what the ballpark cost was going to be and what the real, you know, guts of, you know, an effort would be that we would be seeking to get funded by this grant. So we could potentially hire Bar, or we could potentially go out with some other kind of RFP to hire an engineering firm to do this work. Or we could try and do it through a School of Mines, but I think that under the circumstances, we're probably going to want to go with some kind of a recognized engineering company because we're going to be dealing with potential changes in management implications, for this reservoir system. And there has to be, that additional credibility that comes from an engineering company versus some kind of, student work product over at the School of Mines. So there's two phases to this deal. First, we try and get a grant, and if we sell it right, we might get 75% of our study costs funded. And that study cost would be somewhere between $150,000 and $200,000. But I think the main thing is if we can get consensus from, I guess, both our board here that we think we should go forward with this application, and we get consensus from these stakeholder groups, we start to move the ball forward on people thinking about how we can do a better job of managing that Deerfield-Pactola system for all the water users in, basically, our district that are either served by water that's stored in those two reservoirs, or in somehow they're impacted by the fact that Rapid Creek flows through some of their individual property, or even public property like in the city.
Is that read this is only a total of 400,000 available for the entire program?
Yep, we're going to be in competition over a pretty big geographic area. We've got to do a really good job of selling this, but it fits their program. And one of the things is if we're unsuccessful in the grant, we've already then, because we were able to get consensus from these stakeholders that it's a good idea to start thinking about this, we then might be able to go back and say to these stakeholders, look, we didn't get the grant, but everybody thought it was a pretty important thing to do, so who's going to put money on the table so we can get this work done? And so we could hire then an engineering firm to get that work done. For one, there would be a very likely player in the game and fish. The Black Hills Fly Fishers are very involved, very interested in those winter flows. The marina operator might be very interested in what's going on with the flood pulse, making water potentially elevations higher. We have funding to be able to do that. The city has been they've been doing this for several years, trying to figure out how to find more water for municipal uses. And they're a big player in this, the project that potentially can deliver water from the river in some future timeline. But this water is here. We just have to manage it differently. And we've got to get people to start looking at that other than just leaving the status quo be, what it has been for a really long time.
This is kind of the last one. We're kind of actually asking to give us information for money so we can do a study to tell the Bureau of Reclamation how to better manage the lakes.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Kind of. Yep. You're right. But they aren't doing it, and they won't do it. I've been trying to get them to do that for over 40 years,
Yeah.
and it ain't happening.
Dan?
Are you gonna put a motion on the table, or am I gonna?
Well, go ahead. Do whatever you want to do.
I'll move that we proceed with authorize $7,500 for preparation of a EOR water spark grant by Bar Engineering.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Craig. Okay, discussion on the motion. Dan?
We've got the cart a little bit out in front of the horse in that we've not yet met with the city, and the city is the entity that would really be the one that would have to be in the driver's seat, correct? I mean, we really can't even apply. Is it up to the city to actually be the applying entity? Is that
That's
correct?
correct. Under the rules, the city has to be the applicant.
But
And we're attempting to get a meeting with the city.
anyhow,
with the new
I'll
mayor.
get over that. The way the time frame is, I guess, to me, the simple solution, if it turns out the city says, well, we really don't want to pursue this, I guess then we don't start the proposal until we've got agreement with the city.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
we actually can apply for the grant, as I understand it, but we need to have buy-in by both the city and Rapid Valley Irrigation before we can go
It
forward.
says
Those are the
existing
key
water
places.
districts can't do that. Deborah, but-
I guess the other thing I'll add, I've kind of been on the periphery of this for a while, but, basically, kind of a big one. It had been brought to my attention, I think, it was actually by Heidi Sieverding had pointed out, hey, these proposals are coming around, maybe they'd fit for you. And so I sort of asked the question, can this be the mechanism, the route that we go down? And so I'd been at least enough involved that, we had a meeting locally with Reclamation that involved myself and Craig. Were you there in person, Ron, or did you miss that meeting?
The most recent one I missed.
Anyhow, I think you were at the one where we were down at the rec. Anyhow,
Yes.
the local people are really supportive of the concept. They seem to be. They know they've got a problem and they'd like to be able to better manage that water. And I think that we've kind of crossed an important hurdle there, and that I think they really want to see this happen. Is my impression. So, I think this is the right direction to go.
Got anything to say?
This is the first step, being able to find out if what Rosemary Scholas has proposed is really possible to do. And even at their upper levels at the regional office in Billings, they were supportive. Yeah, we'd take a look at this. They couldn't do it in the next 12 months, but they can get it on their schedule and do it.
Yeah.
So I think we've got the federal agency interested. We're going to have to deal with the Corps of Engineers. We haven't even talked to them yet. But again, I guess if Reclamation will bring them on board, if that needs to be done. So I think we've got the support there to do it. And the city should be interested because they've recently gone through the issue where they had the low flows in the winter and the freezing problem, and they got a lot of comments on that. And so I look for them to be interested in, we should do something like this. Our problem has been, we've got a new mayor and some new staff, and they're kind of, we're going to get meeting with them, but it might be 2-3 weeks away yet.
They do have a new water superintendent, which I haven't met yet, but, so they do have some new people that need to be brought up to speed at the city level for sure. So,
just one more.
Sure.
Just along this meeting deal, we're proposing to have our administrator, put together a little doodle poll here so that we can get these folks involved, in the very near future, so that we have some time to, talk it over with them and have this meeting. And that would be inclusive of the city, even though, our chairman's been down there and put a request in about 2 weeks ago, but we haven't heard
I was
a
back
thing.
there last Friday.
Okay, so we haven't heard a thing from the mayor's office, but if we put a doodle poll out, we'll probably put it out to the Public Works and the water guy, and then go from there.
Yeah, I might try and just get a hold of Dale Tech. Dale's the public works director, and I was trying to go through the mayor's office, but I might just
Got to get someone's attention.
I might just call Dale to tell him what we're proposing here.
Yeah.
Well, one other thing we haven't said yet, I guess it's important, is that the reason we're keying in on the city is they have the contract for the water, the majority of the water supply in Pactola Dam, and they are under contract with Bureau of Reclamation to be the on-the-ground operator.
Yes.
So they're a key player in this.
Oh, absolutely.
As well as the Rapid Valley Water Conservancy District,
Which is the
This is the
irrigators.
because they have water in Deerfield that's delivered through Pactola, and it's pool storage management. So all of those operations are going to come into play in this model, and we're going to need both those major water users on board with us.
Yeah. Any more discussion?
Anybody know how I can get paid to mow my own lawn?
Yes? Have your wife pay you.
Are you looking for somebody to mow your lawn?
Well, it seems to me if I don't meet my own obligations, then somebody will pay me and do a grant and force me to do it better.
Anything else?
Our only exposure on this would be up to $7,500.
At this point in time, we're just going to try and apply for a grant, and that's our cost.
cost to apply it to the application.
To develop the application for this
Yeah,
water
yes.
park grant, yeah. That's it.
Any more discussion? All right, we're ready to vote. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody.
And that's up to 7,500, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
All right, item 13, update on erosion control and stormwater mitigation activities. Dan?
So at our last meeting, I gave an update on erosion control, so I won't repeat the things I went over then, with one exception. I just did a little walk through Star Village area today on the way to the meeting, and just amazes me how good the grass is growing in those little areas where a few of the folks that helped, we were running our sediment and compost mix down there in the cargo sleds. One scoop from the Bobcat would fill 2 sleds, and you slide it down the hill and dump them over. And our oldest guy, old Larry there, he finally quit. How old was he?
It was 82, I think.
80, yeah. He finally, out at Raider Park one day, said, well, I guess I'm going to have to take myself off the list. He had Rake and different guys that take turns hauling the sleds back up. It was really the hardest part of it, but it's heartwarming to see that most of the areas there, that grass is growing really good, and it's really doing a good job of holding. We've mostly done it around those head cuts and these small areas, trying to keep them from getting bigger, and it's doing the right thing. So one of the main reason I was there is kind of trying to size some things up to get with the Parks Department to submit an application for the United Way. September is their month of carrying, so
Day of carrying.
they do it. There are many days of carrying in the,
Oh, is there?
Well, I mean, September, it's the whole month is, whether you call it Day of Carrying. Anyhow, they will have teams that put together volunteer groups to assist with projects like, painting stuff or fixing stuff, or hopefully hauling thousands of feet of wattles into the Star Village area and basically pepper the whole hillside with them to hold things back. Chairman Bierke and I had talked with Scott Anderson, as the head of the Parks operation in Parks and Rec, and we talked about doing it last year, and I'm kind of started kicking myself in the backside here the last few days, because I had left it to him to put together the application. We kind of thought it probably should be Parks Department that applied. And so I talked with him again about it here a couple of weeks ago, and I said, well, maybe we can see if I can apply. And he said, yeah, that would be good. So I will get the application in, and we'll see if we get a team that'll help us. And I think that we can find quite a few of our own volunteers. We've kind of got some of our own regular folks, and we might be able to con a few of those Raider Park people into coming and helping. But we really could do a lot of good, in terms of how we fix that place in the long term. I think we may end up going a direction where we may put in for a vision fund request to actually do some dirt moving and actually move dirt mechanically. I mean, we can't do the whole thing with sleds, and I'd never intended to do it. One time I thought I might be able to get the stormwater, what we used to call, what's been called the rain tax, the stormwater maintenance fee that we all pay. That group oftentimes cuts brush in different places. And I thought maybe they could bring in brush, and just start putting it down and hold the sediment back. And I was using, kind of the trees locally. Well, city's wildland fire group says, well, that's a fire hazard, you can't do that. So they've gone in there and they've cut lots of tree limbs and hauled out all the brush that I wanted to lay on the ground, and so be it. So in the course of by the end of the week or very early in the week, I'll get an application in combination with the city, and we'll see what happens there. But the city sounds committed to bringing in, there's a certain amount of equipment work we need to do ahead of time to tidy up our access trail, haul some dirt in to kind of cover it, and actually I think I can get them to help us with a little bit of topsoiling in that area, that's along our access trail and below a couple of those biggest silt fences. So, we'll see what happens there. So, any questions on erosion control before I move on to stormwater mitigation? That's short enough, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to keep it moving.
Yeah, you're doing good.
Okay. So, stormwater mitigation, back last winter or spring, we formed a little subcommittee to talk about how might we do some of those things. We'd had one meeting, and after that we got together in the field, several of us individually or sometimes as whatever partial groups, looking at some potential sites where we might be able to do some things. One of them is right by the bike path by the blood bank and Alcoholics Anonymous and Northwest Pipe in there. There's an area might be suitable. I'd had some initial discussions there, with the guy from Northwest Pipe, if he might be interested, and he kind of was, kind of been waiting to be able to meet with the city at city property where we would work there. Another very favorable site would be South Dakota's fire mitigation group is out where Game and Fish used to be, and there's a location there that a right-of-way coming down, I forget if it's that South Street or
Yes.
anyhow, it leads down into Mary Hall Park. There'd be a good location there, and the fire group was very interested in working. And basically what happened is we got into May and I had to go fishing and plant a garden and mow my lawn and weed the garden and mow my lawn and harvest the garden, and I'm just kind of picking that back up. So there's a lot of locations out there. One of them Ron had talked to, Thomas and Sons Moving. Since your discussion, I see here it's been a month or two ago, they put in a bunch of new gravel there.
Yes.
They're parking a lot of trailers there, so the window of opportunity probably slammed shut.
No, they still have a really bad place, and
Well,
it's starting to already generate gullies.
Maybe one to look at, but I'm going to kind of change some priorities, things like that. I mean, it's kind of dawned on me that these gravel parking lots are the worst offenders, and there's a ton of that out there in the Deadwood Avenue and Sturgis Road area. And so this revenue that we're wondering what we're going to need to do with it, and these funds that are in the bank, there's a lot of funding that would be needed to fix these things, and I think it'd be nice to have the landowners contributing, but I think we're going to have to do some seed work in there. So I'm going to be picking that back up again here in the weeks and months to come, and once I kind of get into the fall and winter season, it'll have a little more time to turn some wheels on that. One other thing that fits, so last meeting, Linda Hayward came and told us about problems along the Hawthorne ditch, and so I had offered, I'd give her my phone number, and said I'd be happy to, we as an entity, well, I'd be happy to look and see what we could do. So Mr. Mullally and I went out and talked with her one day, and then we went and looked at a few things along the ditch, and there may be some opportunities there. There may be some opportunities where the ditch has been abandoned. Actually, Dan has got a contact who I talked to. Howard Rice is one of the 3 landowners who who were still irrigating when they finally closed the ditch out. So basically, the ditch company essentially no longer exists. Any landowner who has land on both sides of the ditch basically can take over that ditch by submitting a quitclaim deed. I'm not sure what happens when you've got one landowner on each side. I think maybe they can each get half of it. There's probably going to be a lot of stuff going on. People start filling it in, might cause more problems. There may be some number of places, what's happening is there's a lot of places where, as the Rapid Valley area has grown, there is stormwater runoff entering the ditch, and Craig would certainly know probably much more than me, but in irrigation ditches it's kind of inherent. You're crossing these drainages. It can be a problem where that happens, and sometimes you get runoff into the ditches, and when that happens, you've got to let it out of there. What's the big creek just up on Ormond Dam, just upstream from Owl Creek? Owl Creek is Ormond Dam's. Owl Creek there's a big drainage just upstream from there, just downstream from Belle Fourche, but there's quite a structure there. They had to let water into the ditch when it was flowing about so much, and then let it back out. And so there may be places where we could use that ditch as a conveyance, as basically to help mitigate the stormwater. Look for places where can we let it out of there into a natural drainage. We actually came across one spot, and these ditches are set up for this. The ditch, Hawthorne Ditch, goes underneath what's now a developed drainage channel, and what is called an inverted siphon. So the water goes underneath, and then it comes back up back into the regular gradient of the ditch. And on the upstream side of that culvert, it's kind of like an irrigation turnout, so it lets the storm water out there, and it's like an irrigation turnout in that it has boards there, and so you can maintain the water level in the canal at the right elevation to carry water under normal conditions. So in that case, it's as simple as just pulling those boards out of there, and that will get rid of the storm water, or at least a big chunk of it at that point in time. So I don't know, had you talked to that landowner at all in there?
Not since we were there.
But Howard says, it's no big deal. Someone wants to pull those boards out of there and let that water into that drainage channel. That's the thing to do. And he said he's offered to take us around and look more. He says there's probably a lot of places where we might be able to do something. So have you talked to Linda Hayward since we met with her?
Not really, not on this issue.
Maybe if you would tell her, at least we're going to be talking with Howard Rice, and we're doing what we can to try to help a citizen concerned
She said
there.
they will not fill in the ditch because they think it might cause problems. So.
But there's plenty of potential for that to happen, and lots of
people out there.
Anyhow, her trip here, I'd like to think, was at least well worth her time, and I think I think there's some things that can, help alleviate some of the problems they're having, and whether or not there end up being some place where there might be a viable project for us to work with either the county or the county highway department, are kind of the entities that there may be some opportunities there. That's all I've got.
One thing about the Hawthorne ditch, when it was running, a lot of those wells, individual wells out there, people live along the ditch, that ditch leaked a lot of water, and it was basically providing water for those shallow wells. And now there's no water running down there, so people are running out of water. They don't have any water in their wells. It's a problem. Yeah.
I got a general question. Maybe after you're talking with Howard, you can ask him. When the ditch company went out of business, the structure on the creek that impounded the water is still there. What happens to that? Whose is that?
Well, what they have done is, you had noticed they filled in the ditch up there where it
I'm talking about in
was,
Rapid
right, well, just so everyone else is aware, they filled in the ditch. There's basically a gate there that now they welded a big chunk of iron across it, and so where there used to be the ditch diverting from Rapid Creek, that's now filled in. It's basically, I think it's Cherry Street goes south from about where the Coors Light tent or whatever is, the grandstand in the fairgrounds. Just a little bit downstream, that's where this diversion structure is. So the most of that dam is still there, but I think it's been breached to the extent that the water probably runs around one end of it or
I'll have to go
something.
look again, because last time I was there, it was still fully intact and creating a hydraulic roller. But
And my
again,
guess
whose is that now that it's abandoned? Because that's below the low water mark and, into the high water mark of the creek.
I don't think anybody owns it.
Well, somebody had to get a permit to build it.
Well, they did, but if they
No.
got it, it's.
No, that was built, was it 1883, did Howard?
Yeah, back in 18.
Howard say, so it was built before.
I think it's just.
But usually those
There's any-
structures are associated with the water right. Of course, they've abandoned that.
Yeah,
But there's something there. Somebody is responsible
I don't
for that
think-
structure.
Yeah, to me, it would be a DANR thing.
In all likelihood,
Government agency.
No,
in all likelihood,
I don't know what else would, I mean, if they just abandoned it, it's still there.
it could be a project for West Dakota to
Take it out.
maybe work with Game and Fish or something, but to,
Yep, that's a
it's one of those
possibility.
things, probably it'll never get fixed. You might waiting for the next 72 scale storm to take it out, but.
That's a good question. I don't know. I'd check
I'll ask
the
Howard.
DANR first.
I'll ask Howard what he knows about it.
Yeah, Howard might know.
We'll start there.
Okay, I just wanted to.
That's a good question. I don't know what the answer
Because
is.
it's a nuisance. I mean, it's a public
It
nuisance.
is a public nuisance. You're done?
I was done
I
before
don't
these
have any,
questions.
I don't have any comments.
Yeah.
Half an hour.
Right.
I don't have any comments. Any items from directors? Anything else to talk about? All right, we'll go to Dan.
The only thing I have it up here, talked to Sandy McLean again about the Keystone Winter Street Bridge. As you recall, we gave them $15,000 to.
10,000.
Was it 10,000?
10, it was 10.
Okay. For cleaning it out because it's got so much sediment built up, they're worried about flooding anyway. Originally, they were supposed to have it done in June. They're still not done, however, they are moving forward. They got she said there were 4 permits required. They have all those done, and they're working on new bids. That was a week or so ago, so maybe they're further along. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Now, items from the public. We have a Green Valley Sanitary District here. Are you going to give us an update, or what do you?
Well, we can, definitely. My name's Jason Wright. I'm the board president of Green Valley Sanitation District. And primarily just wanted to sit in and see how things were going, I guess. And if need be, we can definitely give an update to the project. Right now, our project got put on hold, per se. We've still been working on it. But we had a lot of snafus, primarily a lot of them originating with COVID. And that really put a wrench in a lot of the advancement of the project. Now that COVID's in our rearview mirror, hopefully, we're moving forward with it. Running into a lot of issues with rural development and the funding sources there. We had to de-obligate and re-obligate through DANR those funds, and that's happening right now because we turned out with them. And so right now our PER preliminary engineering report is being submitted to rural development. And they come back and just wanted a couple of clarifications from it. Didn't sound like that was going to be anything big. The DANR, they want some financial obligations, or where our obligations are. They want a report on that, which is going to be new. Bill Lass is helping us navigate a lot of those waters. Moving forward with interstate engineering, once we get everything submitted to rural development, they will issue the funding package. And then that funding package will kind of determine where we're at as far as a grant loan process. Right now we are in the state of, we can't go really a whole lot further in the engineering side. They want a bunch of money up front to start the engineering. Ron Banks was working with us, and he left, and I think he's working with Keystone now, or
He's working for the Bureau, isn't he?
Bureau of Reclamation.
Yeah, he's with the Bureau of Reclamation.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he was kind of the chair of this whole wastewater project of ours. So interstate engineering, we're to the point where we kind of need to start with the engineering aspect of things and getting that engineering report done to the 75 percentile, so then it can go out for bid. So that's kind of where we're at. The county's starting to ask questions about our project and the advancement of the project, because we do have a lot of septic tanks that are failed. We do have raw sewage within our district that is being deposited into the creek. We know that's happening, and so which is why we came and got some money from the board here to make sure that we clean all that up. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. Getting access to the funds we have sitting in your board here will help move this project along. So and I know we've been kind of waiting, because I think initially it was earmarked for something else, and we hadn't quite gotten to that point yet. And I think
it's one of the things that we did is we wanted to make sure you had your funding package totally in place before we issued any money.
Yep.
And working with interstate engineering and Zach has communicated with me too, that once all your funding's in place, you could draw on this money for doing the design engineering.
Perfect. And so we're fixing to we're hoping by that October, November timeframe.
Okay.
A lot of that stuff, we get those packages back, in the funding package back from rural development. That's really going to dictate where we go.
Okay.
It's got to be affordable, and there's only 300 homes there right now, and we started at a $9.2 million project, and the latest interstate engineering deal came in at just shy of 19 million.
Oh, that.
And so a lot of that has to do with the price of inflation with the workers, the construction companies, of kind of their preliminary engineering report. What that was going to look like, the pipe, that doubled in price. Sounds like that's starting to come down. But just everything in lieu of COVID just went berserk.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to get ahead of that, but be responsible while we're doing it. I don't want to just sign a blank deal like 18 million, yep, let's go move forward, when now all of a sudden we got to go for special assessments and we can't pay for it. Because at that 18 million mark, and if we don't get significant funding, we will literally force people out of their homes just with the special assessment on it.
Yeah.
And that's not what I hope us as a board we're in business of doing. We want to, our reason why we're created is provide good clean drinking water and good sewer. And we got the good drinking water established, now it's a sewer time, and we're rounding second base right now with it. So
Okay. Well, one of the reasons we funded it is because we'd like to see those septic systems be eliminated out there and hook up to the central treatment system out there, Rapid City treatment system.
Yeah, and we did qualify for low income, which is going to release some more monies through DANR. So in the sense of principal forgiveness. And so I did call Thunes' office, Rounds' office, and talk to them about that whole process, because we did do that in 2018 when we started this project. And at that point in time, that number was like 32,000. And I'm like, nobody, and this was right during COVID, I'm like, nobody working and they're making more than that just off of the COVID money. I'm like, it's impossible for us to meet this mark. Bill Last came back earlier this year. He's like, hey, I think we may be able to make this mark. They increased that number. And so I think it was 56,900. And so they increased it significantly. And we did the random drawing, and we found that we did qualify for that. So that's a route that through Bill Last with Black Hills Council, we're going after. So to help hopefully fund this project to make it more affordable for us.
Well, it sounds like you're making project, and we, as you probably saw when we talked about, Dan talked about our budget. You know, we're still, you're still on the books here.
That's good. That's good. So every little bit helps with this project moving forward. We want to get rid of the septic tanks too, and it's only a matter of time when, you know, that whole area is 45 years old, about, you know, and those original septic tanks, a lot of them are coming up to their, you know, their expiration date.
Sure.
And that soil out there, it's not very good soil for septic tanks. That's why we're having a lot of fails. So the sewer, putting a hard sewer lines in will definitely make a difference out there. And with the water.
Well, we wish you good luck, and like I say, we're still holding this money for you.
There for a while it was like this, treading water, but we're gaining. We're making progress now finally. Getting contracts work with the city. They threw us a curveball, and so that postponed us a year and everything else. But it's all said and done with. It's going to be a good project, and it'll be done right.
Okay, good. Any questions from the board members for the sanitary district? Well, we appreciate.
Can I just ask where the land is located?
Just right south here.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, from Reservoir Road to Anderson Road, from south side to Highway 44 is, in a sense, our boundary districts. We do kind of go up on the side, hillside a little bit on Reservoir, but it's only about 2 properties that are up there. Terracotta, which is going to be kind of by the Rapid wastewater plant. There's a community out there adjacent to all of ours, and it's clearly what's theirs and what's ours. Ours are all 1 acre lots, theirs are all 1/4 acre lots. So it's very evident where you hit that line, and that's city property. So yep.
Well, Ken, thanks for coming and giving us an update.
Appreciate the time.
Good luck. Good luck.
We hope. Thank you.
All right. Is there anything else from the public? Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Dan asked me to come by because I know this isn't the place to get my troubles solved, but I live in the Orchard Meadow subdivision. I don't know if you know where that is, behind Common Sense.
Yes.
Right over there. For no food by fire. It was a Hanny, you know, Hanny's subdivision.
Yep.
Shabby.
Shabby.
Subdivision. You know. I understand it was filled a lot before they built there. Well, I got water in my crawl space. I called the state. I talked to the builder. Here's a good point: don't buy a builder's house before he retires and moves out of state, because he hung up on the phone. He says we're irrigating too much, and we weren't, because it was there in the winter too. Been there exactly 3 years now, brand new house. So getting us, water along a couple edges of the foundation and some in the middle. There's a neighbor who, Hillside, just bought the last 16 lots, Hillsview, and he's getting water in the middle of his, not at the edges of his foundation, but the middle. So they Marty Quinn, the owner, he straightened that out, I guess, mostly with a sump in the middle with some fingers running out to collect the water in the middle. I get some water in the middle too. I'm not getting a lot of water, but the state wasn't really able to help me. They said the consumer laws aren't that great. The realtor noted this water when we bought the house, put it on the check sheet, you know, for the builder to, you know, well, they never had the builder sign anything, so the builder is just, you know, let's say he hung up on the phone.
Are you south of the Murphy Ditch?
I don't know where the Murphy Ditch is.
It's
There's
kind
a
of,
map there.
what's that?
There's a map on the wall there.
You know where the Common Sense is?
It should be.
Yeah.
That ditch is south.
Yeah,
the
south
ditch
of
is-
Common Sense.
The ditch is south of the Common Sense. It runs all the way across.
Oh, yeah, I think I know what you mean. I'm just, I'd be just north of it.
You're north of the ditch?
Yeah, not far.
I was just wondering if you were getting water from the ditch, Murphy Ditch.
They say
Is
the
it-
water's 7 foot down where I am, and
Oh.
most of the houses are dry, but I think just maybe the point Dan wants me to make is, you know, we shouldn't be filling in so close. It's just a few hundred yards from Rapid Creek, and that ditch apparently is even closer. And it's somewhat of an unsolvable problem. I gotta run dehumidifiers, and I got three spot sump pumps. You know, you can take a 5-gallon bucket, drill holes, throw sump in it, you know, to spot reduce in areas. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I got a main sump pump, then we got three others for these other 3 areas, and we're digging the clay, you know, which is very difficult to dig little channels to go to those. And, you know, I talked to Blackburn, and Rapid City Foundation, whatever, you know, and they want $15,000 to cover it with plastic and tape it up, whatever, and maybe put in another sump. It didn't sound like they had any great solutions.
Are there homes, you said there's other homes that have the same problem out
There
there?
are some. I haven't queried everybody, but, you know, I know of a couple. And the ones beside me, though, apparently are pretty dry, so. The guy who dug the hole was pretty concerned about it. He came by and put in, you know.
So you don't, is it just groundwater, or is it water coming, any idea where the water's coming from?
I guess up from the ground. I mean, I think these guys checked it for chlorine or whatever, make sure it wasn't a pipe leaking.
Okay.
You know, and it's just groundwater from somewhere.
What
Seems
are
like
you
it's-
asking from us?
I'm just making you aware of it, I guess.
Okay.
Dan said he had,
I just told them it would be nice to just
Okay,
state what's happening, and we probably wouldn't be able to do anything, but
yeah. Which I
he stopped
agree
in
with.
the office, and so.
I don't know if, you know, did you have to get a permit? You're not in the city limits out there, or are you?
I am, as far as I know, yeah.
You are in the city limits out there? Have you talked to anybody from the city at all?
No, I haven't. Just talked to the builder and the state about it.
Well, you might want to just visit with the engineering staff there at the city, and you know, maybe they could come out and look at it too and see if.
The big
See
fear
where
is
the
I don't
water's
mind
coming
it's a little
from.
mucky down there because it does have plastic over it, but mold is the question.
Yeah.
Is it gonna mold up all the floor joists and et cetera?
Yeah, maybe a trip down to City Hall and see if you talk to engineering down there, maybe somebody could take a look at that. So when they built the house, was the city building inspector on site then?
I should hope so. I wasn't there.
Okay,
It had just finished building when we moved in.
oh, okay.
Just been built.
That's about the only thing I suggested. I don't know what, I'm sorry it's happening, but,
Well, the state said the consumer laws are not all that strong in this state. He tried to help a little, but gave up.
well, I appreciate you letting us know what's going on.
I don't mean to come up as a big victim, but it's,
Okay, well, thanks. Anything else from the public?
You know, y'all were talking about erosion in Rapid Creek and whatnot, and with the higher water releases, and even out in the Green Valley District, we've noticed a lot of banks starting to erode a lot more with the higher flows, because the consistent higher flows, that's been happening. So it's definitely an issue, even this far down.
Yeah, no, Ron said, we've got a project with Pennington County, they're gonna do some erosion control measures out there in the valley, that Pennington County Conservation District is managing those projects.
Yeah, and they're aware of the couple areas of concern that we've brought to them, so,
Yeah,
yeah.
And the red water does make it all the way out here. Because I live on the creek, we live on the creek, and when it rains real hard, it's
oh,
rains right
yeah,
here.
yeah. Yeah, what we're doing is just, probably a drop in the bucket, but every little bit of,
That all helps.
every little bit helps, you bet. So, all right, well, the meeting's adjourned. 4:45. Thanks, everybody, for coming.